January 26, 1945. Dawn. Kapelsche, Veer, Netherlands. The smoke screen rolled across the frozen marshland like a living thing. 300 Canadian artillery pieces had just opened fire, shaking the earth, drowning out every other sound. Somewhere beyond that wall of smoke and snow lay an island, 5 miles long, 1 mile wide, defended by 150 German paratroopers who had been told one thing: hold at all costs. The Canadians were coming with 2 infantry battalions, a tank regiment, flamethrower carriers, and overwhelming firepower. They expected to be finished by lunch. They had no idea they were about to fight one of the most stubborn, forgotten, and brutal small unit actions of the entire war. For 6 days, this tiny sliver of Dutch marshland would become hell on earth. A place where tanks drowned in mud, where infantry charged the same fortified farmhouse 4 times in a single day and were thrown back each time, where 150 German paratroopers held off thousands of Allied troops, inflicting casualties that shocked commanders on both sides. By the time it was over, 364 Allied soldiers would be casualties trying to capture a piece of ground so small you could walk across it in 20 minutes. Here's the question that haunts every military historian who studies this battle. At what point does holding ground become more costly than abandoning it? When does determination cross the line into waste? And who decides when a tiny island in a frozen river is worth 500 men? If you were the commander on either side, would you have kept fighting for this island? Or would you have walked away? Leave your answer in the comments. To understand why this nameless island mattered, we need to step back 3 months. September 1944. Operation Market Garden had failed. The British paratroopers at Arnhem had been destroyed, but the Allies still held a salient of Dutch territory up to the city of Nijmegen, and critically, the Great Nijmegen Road Bridge, captured intact during Market Garden. The Germans wanted it back. They tried to eliminate the Bulge in their lines, laying as it did dangerously close to their main western defenses. They failed. The British kept their foothold north of the River Vaal, but the Germans did manage one victory. On September 28, 1944, German naval frogmen successfully destroyed the Nijmegen Railway Bridge. 1 bridge down, 1 to go. The Nijmegen Road Bridge became the Allied supply node for any renewed offensive toward Germany. The British held an island of territory created by deliberate flooding between Nijmegen and Arnhem. The Germans concentrated on removing this bulge. When German paratroopers launched a serious attack on December 4, 1944, they were beaten back hard by the British 49th Infantry Division. Heavy losses on both sides. No ground gained. Field Marshal Montgomery was preparing his next push to the Rhine. He ordered British Second Army to clear remaining German resistance west of the river Maas, particularly around the town of Venlo. This was done by early December. Then, everything changed. December 16, 1944. The Germans launched their surprise Ardennes offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. Montgomery had to shift British XX Corps south to help contain the German thrust. The Canadians and British now braced for a second German offensive in their sector. It was expected. Intelligence suggested it was imminent. It never came. Generaloberst Kurt Student, commanding Army Group H, had indeed prepared a supporting operation: 3 infantry divisions, 2 parachute divisions, 150 tanks. The objective: Antwerp, the Allied main supply base. An entire parachute battalion was supposed to drop on British artillery positions before the main offensive began. But the Ardennes thrust fell behind schedule and was eventually stopped by U.S. and British forces at the Meuse River. Student never launched his attack. However, the German paratroopers gathered for that offensive were still there, and they were about to fight a forgotten but vicious struggle on the Maas River. Northeast of Breda, a subsidiary channel of the Maas forms a small island along the river's south shore. Its name, Kapelsche Veer. The British and Canadian front line now ran along the Maas River, except in one place. The Germans held a strong position on the Allied side of the line. That small island. Student maintained it by rotating fresh companies in every 3 to 4 days. The Allies were determined this German foothold be eliminated. The problem? The paratroopers had dug in thoroughly. The approaches were open, snow-covered ground. Perfect fields of fire. Late December 1944. The Polish 1st Armored Division attacked. Repulsed. They tried again in January 1945, 120 casualties. Forced back again. Like Monte Cassino in Italy, their comrades at Kapelsche Veer seemed immovable. The position had to be taken. For morale. To deny the Germans observation of Allied movements. To stop their artillery spotting and patrols into Allied positions. The Poles had number 47 Commando Royal Marines under their command. On January 13th, the Marines advanced across flat, snow-covered terrain. Operation Horse. German mortar fire was intense. 49 Marine casualties. The island was too stubbornly held. The force too small. Withdrawn. The problem was turned over to the Canadians. The 4th Armored Division. This time, a much bigger attack. Operation Elephant. Brigadier J.C. Jefferson's 10th Armored Brigade would assault the island. Facing them, elements of General Lieutenant Hermann Plocher's 6th Fallschirmjäger Division. A reinforced company dug in with observation posts linked to artillery batteries, self-propelled guns, and mortar units on the mainland. The island, 5 miles long, 1 mile wide at its widest point. Dikes, up to 20 feet high, protecting the southern side from the river's strong currents. Operation Elephant involved 2 infantry battalions, 1 tank regiment, and 300 guns. No preparatory bombardment this time. That only alerted defenders. Instead, the Canadians would attack in daylight through a smoke screen. Wasp flamethrower carriers would support. 2 companies attacking from the east, 1 from the west, moving simultaneously toward the objective, the harbor. Canadian engineers built a bridge, nicknamed the Mad Whore's Dream, ready to be hauled into place to let tanks cross. The Germans reinforced the garrison to 150 men from Oberstleutnant Martin Vetter's 13th Fallschirmjäger Regiment. Student made it clear. Hold the island at all costs. The paratroopers took him at his word. 07:15, January 26, 1945. The smokescreen began. 10 minutes later, C Company, Lincoln and Welland Regiment crossed the bridge supported by 4 Wasp flamethrowers. They linked up with A Company, which had crossed the icy waters in Buffalo armored carriers. A canoe party crossed toward the harbor. Intense German fire. Several canoes lost. Of 60 men, only 15 made it halfway. A company reached a heavily fortified house codenamed Grapes. Heavy fire drove them back. By 09:45, a company halted and dug in. Close to another fortified house, Raspberry. The German paratroopers counterattacked. Drove a company all the way back to C Company's positions. C Company lost all its officers. 11:30 hours. The attack was aborted. Both companies withdrawn. In the west, B Company crossed in buffaloes toward Raspberry. Stopped cold by fire. 1200 hours. Attack failed. Brigadier Jefferson ordered the Lincoln and Welland to try again from the west. Fresh Argyle and Sutherland Highlanders from the east, with tank support. The eastern bridge could take tanks. The west had no bridge, vehicles would be rafted over. 2 Stuart light tanks crossed the Mad Whore's Dream. They couldn't negotiate the tall dike bank. The Argyles came under heavy mortar fire. In the west, German patrols and a snowstorm delayed construction of the tank raft. January 27th. Attacks from both ends defeated by mortars, machine guns, artillery. Armor now seemed the only way to break the stalemate. Canadian artillery was causing problems for the Germans, slowing reinforcements. They only managed to move over parts of a pioneer and anti-tank platoon. 2 Sherman tanks crossed the eastern bridge. The raft in the west began operations. 3 Shermans landed. January 28th. The temperature suddenly rose. The island thawed into a swamp of mud. In the west, 1 Sherman bogged down, blocking the tank behind it. The lead Sherman supported infantry toward Raspberry. German fire stopped them. In the east, 4 tanks moved toward Grapes. Infantry stopped again by ferocious fire. By 1400, Canadian attacks had halted. 1 victory. A Sherman shelled a 25-man German platoon. 17 fell, 5 wounded. Fire slackened. The Argylls captured Grapes. The Lincoln and Welland took Raspberry. But German paratroopers remained in tunnels and bunkers beneath the houses. That night, they counterattacked. Recaptured both. January 29, 1945. German mortar fire increased. Canadian artillery replied with 14,000 shells from 25-pounders. Infantry assaulted Grapes and Raspberry again. Mud made movement nearly impossible. Tanks bogged everywhere. The Argylls retook Grapes. Raspberry held. The Germans were down to 70 men, including 20 wounded, holding positions around Raspberry and the harbor's west side. January 30th. Dawn. 2 Shermans opened fire on Raspberry. Infantry attacked. Got nowhere. Machine guns and mortars. The Canadians were 100 yards from Raspberry. Tried again at 1500. Repulsed. The Germans allowed the Canadians to collect wounded under a flag of truce. With 2 more Shermans, the Canadians tried a third time that day. 4 Shermans battered German positions. The Argylls stormed Raspberry at bayonet point. Further advance stopped. On the eastern side, a German Panzerschreck team knocked out a Sherman. 0800, January 31st. The Argylls linked with the Lincoln and Welland. The Germans had quietly evacuated the island during the night. The cost: German casualties 64 struck down or wounded, 34 captured. Canadian casualties 133 struck down or wounded, Polish and Royal Marine assaults 231 casualties. Total Allied casualties 364 men. For a tiny island you could walk across in 20 minutes. It demonstrated once again what formidable fighters German paratroopers could be. It showed that in the last year of the war, German soldiers could still fight effectively, stubbornly, brilliantly. But it also showed something else. War isn't always about grand strategies or sweeping campaigns. Sometimes it's about a frozen island in a river nobody's heard of. About men ordered to hold ground that doesn't matter strategically. About attacking the same farmhouse 4 times because orders say it must be taken. About 150 paratroopers who held because they were told to hold. And thousands of Allied soldiers who attacked because they were told to attack. Kapelsche Veer wasn't Normandy. It wasn't the Bulge. It won't appear in most history books, but for the men who fought there, Canadian, Polish, British, German, it was everything. It was 6 days of frozen hell, of smoke and mud and fire, of courage and stubbornness and sacrifice. And when it was over, the island stood empty. The Germans gone, the Allies victorious. But at what cost? 364 casualties for 5 miles of Dutch marshland that would be forgotten within weeks. That's the reality of war that grand strategy never captures. That documentary films gloss over, that memorials rarely mention. The small battles, the forgotten islands, the men who gave everything for ground that history would never remember. If this story reminded you that courage isn't always found in famous battles, share it. Leave a comment about the small sacrifices that changed your family's history. And subscribe for more forgotten stories of the soldiers who fought in places history overlook, but shouldn't have.